Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nidhi Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Kauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I hope all of you are doing wonderful with the blessings of Krishna and reading the Bhagavad Gita regularly. Om Tat Sat, very happy to be here today with all of you. Today is a very auspicious day. Today is Sattila Ekadashi. And devotees take advantage of today to render more devotional service, remember Krishna more, and it is multiplied many, many times the effect of it. So that's why I said today is an auspicious day, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you, remembering something about Krishna and his words in the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you for your presence. So, should I ask you questions, or I presume that you know what has happened in the last week, since the last week is not too far away? Okay? If anybody wants to share a highlight from the last week, you may do so. Gayatri has raised her hand. Yeah.
Good evening.
Okay, Gayatri, go ahead.
Yes. In the last session, we learned about a person's karma, vikarma, and akarma. Karma, wherein a person, whether it's good or bad, what they do is their karma. Vikarma, wherein they do deceitful things or wrongful things. And akarma, wherein one is completely into service of Lord Krishna.
Yes. Good. Thank you. For today, we're going to examine the last, but proceeding to the last set of verses from 25 to 33 from the 4th chapter. It's all about one topic, and that topic is yajna. If you remember right, in the last session that we did, the last shloka, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina, in text 24, you have Prabhupada's purport, which is giving you a definition of what is yajna, right? Gives you a little definition of what is yajna. You can see there. So let me ask Draupadi to read this on the screen.
When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice for the absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, and the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada 4.24.
Thank you, Draupadi. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is, Prabhupada has already introduced the idea of what is yajna in this particular purport. In other words, whatever action you do for the Supreme in that consciousness, that is called yajna, ideally speaking. But he goes again to say in that same purport, which is such a brilliant purport, that you may not be perfect in Krishna consciousness, but you can still be cured by yajna again. What is that? What type of yajna is that? Purificatory yajna, right? Devaki Sumukhi. Can you read that?
Yes,
On the
Maharaj.
screen?
The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna.
Thank you, Devaki. Right. So here again, akarma. You heard earlier in the 4th chapter, like Gayatri just mentioned, about akarma. All those activities of akarma that you do are actually yajna, because they are meant to please the supreme absolute truth. Now, there are many similar things that may be called different things. It's because Sanskrit is used volubly in many different ways. But there are reasons for that. As we move ahead, we will also know. Yajnartat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. You heard this in 3rd chapter. Every Atma has to do something for Vishnu. Yajno vai Vishnu. For the sake of yajna. Yajna artha means for the sake of yajna. Yajna means Vishnu. There. Yajnarthat karmana. For the sake of Vishnu, you must do work. Otherwise, you will get stuck and entangled in this world. Anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Otherwise, you will get entangled. That also you heard in the 3rd chapter. So here in the 4th chapter, Krishna will go ahead and speaks about different types of yajna. After he has laid the foundation for what is akarma, karma and vikarma. And Prabhupada has defined here that akarma, in that consciousness, what you do is actually meant for pleasing the Lord. That's called yajna. Now, why is it called in English sacrifice? Somebody would say. May not be the exact translation. But we can understand that in a world where we are constantly absorbed in ourselves, about our own enjoyment, our gratification, where can I get gratification? Where we are absorbed, for you to do something without thinking like that and think about satisfying the Supreme Lord, not my senses. A little time you may spend doing that. That's the meaning of yajnartat karmana. It is definitely a sacrifice for you if I tell you, stop thinking about yourself, stop planning your own gratification. Please plan something for the supreme absolute truth in your life. Don't spend all the 24 hours sleeping, eating, mating, defending, and all that. And pack it up with this alone. Don't think this is what life is about. You'll be disappointed. Introduce some activity that is meant as an offering to the Lord. That's why it's called sacrifice. Why? Okay, I'm giving 10 minutes for chanting Hare Krishna out of my 24 hours. That's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice. And it's a good thing you're doing towards the absolute. It's not about worshipping demigods. It's not about doing charity. It's not about other things, which may also be good for you in different ways. But it's particularly about satisfying the supreme absolute truth, Vishnu, Krishna, Narayana, however you might want to address that. So it's called activities that you do towards the supreme absolute as an offering away from absorption in you and your requirement and your indulgence alone. That is called sacrifice, generally speaking. Okay, this is scientific language. This is language of the Vedic culture. To call it yajna, to call it is very broad. And all these terminologies may be remembered because they will repeat again and again. And they come everywhere. So I'm just trying to evoke a definition within you fit for your type of understanding. And then Krishna goes further. I think I won't go into too much detail into that. But Krishna goes further to delineate types of sacrifices, categories of sacrifices. And the purport Prabhupada writes very beautifully. If you've read the purports, which I presume you have done, if you go to 25, and Prabhupada writes in that very wonderfully, explaining what is the meaning of Daivam evapare yagyam yoginah paryupasate brahmagnau apare yagyam yagne naivo pahjuhvati. He starts explaining different types of yajnas, different categories of yajna, and how in whichever situation you are, you can offer that. So somebody may be in an ashram, grahastha ashram, sannyasa ashram. You may be in brahmachari ashram. You may be in vanapastha ashram. And he gives an example there of grahastha ashram, austerity and sacrifice that you could do, and brahmachari is austerity and sacrifice you could do. And what is the purpose of yajna, right? So these are topics that Krishna covers. We are not able to go into each one of them very deeply. It's a very technical thing, but Krishna is only brushing through that in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole Varnashrama and the Vedic culture is filled with different type of opportunities in different situations and circumstances to do yajna. Okay? So there is mind control, there is hearing, offering, there is vows and austerities, that is sacrifice by breath control, pranayama, there is a result of performing sacrifice actually to give to the Lord, many types of things like this, knowledge and everything. Like say for a brahmachari, he doesn't listen to anything else apart from the sound of Brahman, Shabda Brahman only. He won't listen to any other part of the Vedic literature or culture which speaks about anything else that is secondary to Brahman. Brahman means absolute truth. In that way, he makes a sacrifice. I won't hear anything else apart from the Vedas telling me about the absolute truth. Because Vedas are so huge, you can even learn music from the Veda. You can learn black magic from Atharva Veda. You can learn how to take somebody else's wife from the Atharva Veda. You can learn all sorts of things you can learn. But he decides not to delve into any of those things, even though it's got the title as from Veda. I focus only the core subject matter. So that is a brahmachari's austerity, especially when he is studying. Swadhyaya he is doing. He decides to do that. That austerity and sacrifice is being spoken about. Then how to control the mind. When we tell our mind, shut up, we're not going to do that now. We're going to listen to Bhagavad Gita now. Today is Ekadashi. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to spend my time doing this. Mental control. Your mind is yearning. Your mind is asking, let's do this. Let's go out and eat up here in this particular place. Let's order pizza here and go for a picnic here. You choose, no, forget it. I'm going to log on and go for the session. I'm not doing it. It's mind control. It's a sacrifice. So in this way, Krishna is delineating several things. I have put it down what Prabhupada said in the purport in a small chart for you. If you go to that purport of 25, 25. Prabhupada is speaking about different types of yajna, and he's coming and he's making us understand what it means. Commonly, he calls it divisions of sacrifice. You can read that actually in the purport. It's very important to know this, so I thought I'll delineate it for you a little bit. From the purport of 25, if you read, I'm going down and skipping some lines. It says, so there are different kinds of sacrifices in terms of different categories. If you have it in front of you, please 4.25 purport. Such different categories of sacrifice by different types of performers only superficially demark varieties of sacrifice. Factually, sacrifice means to satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is also known as Yajna. All the different varieties of sacrifice can be placed within two primary divisions, namely sacrifice of worldly possessions and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Worldly possessions and in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Those who are in Krishna consciousness sacrifice all material possessions for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is what they do in white. For the satisfaction of whatever I have manasa, dhiya, vacha, karmana. My mind, my body, my intelligence, my wealth. I will maintain myself a little bit, but whatever I have in excess, more than my necessity, I like to definitely satisfy the Supreme Lord. Then there are others who are simply after knowledge. This discussion has been there even in the 3rd chapter. And then Arjuna says, is knowledge better or acting better? Like that. And Krishna clarifies, acting in devotion as a service is better, rather than sitting and meditating and being a false pretender. So we heard that. Those who are in Krishna consciousness sacrifice all material possessions. And those who want some temporary material happiness sacrifice a material possession to satisfy demigods such as Indra, Chandra, etc. So whatever material possessions have, two things happen to them. Some give it to the Supreme Lord Vishnu as an offering without any returns. Some give it to the demigods, and there's a quid pro quo. They're asking, I'll do this homa, this yajna for you, you give me this. It's an application I'm giving and paying up and respecting you and acknowledging. Now, please give me this. I need a beautiful wife. I worship Parvati, Durga. I need a good husband. I need good health. I worship Surya. I need money. I worship Kubera. I need this. I need that. Whatever it is you do, homa, yajna, everything. Fruitively, you do this. But devotees who are in Krishna consciousness don't ask anything from the Lord. It's not necessary to ask, they know. And He will maintain them even otherwise. And they don't care. They're more interested in using whatever material assets they have in offering to the Lord as a service so that they can have a reciprocation in love, in bhakti with the Lord. They consider that to be a much, much higher gain than some small material gain from the demigods. So Prabhupada is saying, this is yajna. When you do devotional service to Krishna, it is the best yajna. But there are other types of yajnas in pursuit of knowledge, in pursuit of some material position and wealth and whatever it is. And other topmost type is those who do as an offering to the Supreme. So in this way, Prabhupada has done an analysis, which I thought I should just summarize in the form of this chart to you. This area, this yellow area, sacrifice of identity in pursuit of transcendental knowledge, is worth a little mention. That's a little, a little caution we have to have. This topic was discussed earlier also in the 3rd chapter, wherein, Krishna will tell Arjuna it is better. It'll come up again in the 12th chapter. It comes up again many times in different angles. That is, the pursuit of knowledge, that is spiritual knowledge, doesn't always end in bhakti. The pursuit of spiritual knowledge can keep you spiritual without bhakti. There is a stage like that. And what that means is that you opt for being spiritually positioned, because that's a very great, enjoyable position for the soul, because he has shed his material influence and is free from matter and material influence and is enjoying his spiritual identity. Yasva atmarati revasyat atma triptasya manava atma santushtaha. Krishna describes this Brahman platform of being purely spiritually oriented. But he also wants in the Bhagavatam that this is a slippery, yes, like skating on thin ice. Why? You need to be hooked on to the Supreme Lord in love. Otherwise, you may again return to the material world. That's the problem with this. Although it is spiritual, it doesn't have a shelter. So Prabhupada gave the example of a spaceman who takes away in his rocket, in his spaceship. But he's out in space, but he has no place to land. He has no place to land. He's not having a space station. For landing, he has to come back again to the Earth planet. So he said, if you don't have a place to land, that is, if you don't have love for Krishna, and if you don't have devotional service, bhakti yoga, then you have to return. Although you may be materially free, spiritually placed. So that is the situation that Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita also. You may be happy, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, na sochati na kankshati, samas sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. After this, mad bhakti, after when he is in the spiritual position, he can actually seek higher pleasure of bhakti. So that is just some explanation for you. What these people do is, well, I don't even want an identity. I will merge into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord. I want to become one with the Brahman. Right? So you sacrifice your identity. That's one type of sacrifice. I no more am an individual. I sacrifice my identity, I merge. So that's considered to be a very basic spiritual realization. But merging is something that many mostly all the devotees will never want to do. Losing your individuality. It's considered to be not very interesting at all. Everybody wants their individuality, and retaining their individuality, they want to reciprocate with the Supreme Absolute Truth as a person and enjoy in transcendental bliss. Right? So it's a dangerous proposal to sacrifice your identity and be nothing. That's one type of sacrifice, but mostly people shun it. Okay? Right. So here you see Prabhupada again from 28. Krishna consciousness, however, is different from all these things that were listed, because it is the direct service of the Supreme Lord. Krishna consciousness cannot be attained by any one of the above mentioned types of sacrifice, but can be attained only by the mercy of the Lord and his bona fide devotees. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is transcendental. Right? Very important point. Because this is what Krishna is trying to tell you in every chapter. Becoming a devotee, becoming a holder of bhakti relationship with me is very unique. And it's something to do only with you and me. I give it to you because you desire it, and we both are in communion. And our relationship deepens and deepens and deepens, and there is amazing, ecstatic, transcendental bliss in that. But that is hugely different from sacrificing your identity. It is mentioned like, it's like the water in the hoof of a calf's hoof print in the rainy season in the mud you will see, as compared to the huge ocean. The Brahma Ananda that you get by seeing your own identity is nothing compared to what bliss you get by associating with Krishna, relating with him in bhakti. Like you'd see the gopis doing, the gopas doing, all the great devotees of the Lord doing, Sudama, Prahalad, Dhruva, Pandavas, all of them you see, they're all licking up a lot of honey in relationship with the Lord. So that is called Krishna consciousness. That is completely of a different category. It's not in the category of these type of sacrifices. demigod sacrifice, sacrificing your identity, etc. This is of a totally different range and aspect, very hugely different. That's one thing you should know, right? So Krishna is also telling here that actually all sacrifices culminate in transcendental knowledge. One of the fruits of sacrifices, transcendental knowledge, jnana yajna parantapa sarvam karma kilam partha jnani parisamapyate. So Saranya, can you read that?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge.
Yes, thank you. So this is just an aspect of sacrifice. Most of the sacrifices, the fruit is that you become edified. There's edification. And you get to understand more knowledge in terms of what is spirituality, what is bhakti, etc. That is jnane parisamapyate. This is an important factor to know. That everything that you do as a sacrifice for the Supreme Absolute will, even if you didn't get the ultimate love of Krishna immediately, it will definitely give you knowledge more about the world around you, about yourself, about the absolute truth, and you will go one notch, two notches higher and higher. That's a very important aspect to know in sacrifice. Sacrifice brings knowledge, right? So that is why we perform these sacrifices. Now Krishna will go ahead further and speak the greatness of this transcendental knowledge, which you get through sacrifices of these various types. Topmost amongst them being the devotee performing sacrifice of serving Krishna. Okay? So Krishna will go beyond this and explain the great glory of transcendental knowledge. That we will be covering in our next session. But basically, Krishna is concluding with these shlokas, different types of sacrifice, what's the purpose of sacrifice, categories and divisions of sacrifice, and it has to be done. That's the meaning of a human being, and it culminates anyway in knowledge. Okay? So you can scale this very huge concept down into your material world. In the material world also, you have to perform sacrifices if you want to get something done. If you want to bring up your child, you have to sacrifice a lot of your likes and your desires, isn't it? You have to bear the child. The mother is to bear the child for 9 months, has to go through quite some challenging times, and then is to bring up the child. And you have to sacrifice many things. You can't sit now when the child is asking for attention and sit and browse and answer on social media, watch this video and all that. You will only be able to do that at the expense of your growth of your child. You see, the child will wake up in the middle of the night at 1 o'clock and scream. And maybe the child is past stool, urine. You'll have to get up at 1 o'clock. You'll have to clean up the child, change the sheets, make a new bed, and put the child to bed, and then smile at the child. And the child will again kick its legs again and start smiling at you. But you are very tired. And then he will start playing at 2:30 in the night. And he'll expect you to play with him. And then you'll have to do something like that and then doze off, and then somehow he will also sleep, and that time you'll be so happy. Thank you very much, you slept. Let me get at least 2 hours sleep. This is a sacrifice you have to do. And every mother does that. Every parents, have to do so many different sacrifices. So in the material world also, we do sacrifice for people whom we love. And we don't mind doing it. But if you're asked to do a sacrifice by your employer, who says that, why don't you skip the birthday party of your son today and come for this meeting, and say, get lost. I'll never do it for you. Most probably you will say, I cannot do it for you. Right? You won't do it. So there are certain things that you would do. There are certain things obviously you won't do. It's not worth the sacrifice. But you will see in this category, you will always do sacrifice for those whom you love. That will be your priority. I'm talking about sacrifice in the material world. You will do that in ordinary parlance, common parlance. You will happily do that, and you like to do that. So if you scale this a little bit, if you fall in love with Krishna, you will definitely sacrifice. And that's exactly what Krishna is asking you to do in Bhakti. In the whole Bhagavad Gita, I call it a love story. In every chapter, Krishna is saying, me and you have an eternal relationship. You have forgotten, I remember everything. Right? And that's the hint he gave to Arjuna. When Arjuna said, how am I supposed to believe that you spoke 120 million years ago to Vivaswan? And Krishna very coolly told him, there are so many important things you have forgotten about me and you, yaar. What to speak of me speaking to Vivaswan? He told him, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacharjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam veta parantapa. Many, many janmas have passed and I remember everything and you may not remember. And you know, all these janmas have passed and what I'm waiting for, that's the main thing. In the past, our relationship, that I'm trying to remind you. Right? So when we fall in love with Krishna, this sacrifice comes naturally. But when we are not in love with Krishna, we have not developed our bhakti, our eternal relationship, we do it as a sadhana. So now when I'm asking you to read Bhagavad Gita, it is very difficult for some of you. You think that, oh, I'll just attend the session. I mean, don't ask me to read and all that. I tried reading it. I didn't go beyond a few paragraphs. It's better I hear from you. I like to hear. I don't want to read. Actually, you can read if you want, but then you don't want to take the pains, maybe. But some of you maybe are making that sacrifice and reading. And according to this formula, you making the sacrifice, you will get knowledge. You will get knowledge. So I'm just trying to tell you, even in the material world, when you sacrifice, you get some good fruit. You will tell your child, listen, Baba, you have to study for the exam the next month, forget it. No more tennis, no more going with your friends. Evening you come, better you spend at least 3-4 hours studying. Otherwise, you'll flunk the exams. It's better you do all these things after the exams. You can do it for the whole day, I don't care. So the son has to make a sacrifice. He agrees, yes, I better do it. Otherwise, I'm going to regret it. So he sacrifices social media, sacrifices going to play, sacrifices his other things and everything, and stays put, eats less, burns the midnight oil, and studies throughout the night till 12 o'clock, goes to sleep, gets up in the morning, runs to school, and comes back. And you know, you have worked out that he will do the sacrifice. But at the end, what happens is he comes out in flying colors and he's very happy about it. And then you're not going to ask him if after that he goes and plays tennis the whole day or he gets off with his friend somewhere on a picnic. You're not going to say anything to him. He deserves it. Take it. So even in the material world, sacrifice gives you some fruit. Sacrifice gives you growth internally. Krishna is telling, Yajna dana tapakarma pavanani manishina in Bhagavad Gita. These three things should never be given up, even if you're a liberated person. Yajna, dana, charity, tapa, austerity. These three things should never be given up by anybody in this world, even if they are in a very high position of spiritual understanding. Why? Pavanani manishina. It purifies everybody. It cleanses you, right? So this is the way to look at the meaning of sacrifice on the whole and understand what it really means in terms of going on the path of realizing the absolute. See, if you see the sequence in the 4th chapter, Krishna started explaining transcendental knowledge, how it came, the parampara. And then briefly Arjuna asked, how do I know this is true? And then he revealed himself a little bit to Arjuna. He said, I am so and so, I'm not like you. I'm God, I'm the supreme absolute truth. Briefly, he gave a little sprinkle overview quickly. And then he went back to explaining karma, vikarma, and all that. We understood more about action because the whole thing is about Arjuna acting and performing his job as a Kshatriya, wherein he has got confused. Now we have gone to quite some extent to understand what work is, how work can be worship, how work now can become yajna and benefit you. If you simply make your choices correctly and put your energy and do it that way, it becomes liberating your actions. We should not act whimsically. We should go by, there is a way of doing things in this world. And by yoga karma kaushalam, kushalam means expertise. Yoga means expertise in performance in this world in such a way it gives you top-class benefits. So if you act without knowledge, you'll get contaminated, you'll get entangled, you'll perform more abominable actions. But if you act under a proper guidance and know what to do and what not to do and do accordingly, controlling your mind and everything together, you'll get benefits. And you may get even for material benefits also, you need to do the same thing. But here Krishna is going a notch earlier and saying, you might as well use all these skills and do the right thing, the right type of yajna. That is offering to the Supreme. Okay? You can be smart and even do the yajna to demigods and get material benefit. You can be smart or rather smarter and instead of demigods, offer it to the Supreme Absolute Truth and get long-term benefits. That is like super smart. And that's what Krishna is recommending throughout. You will see him coming forth again at the end of this chapter or through it, and again telling you, why don't you do this? It's the best thing you could do. Krishna consciousness. Om Tat Sat. We'll see you next week. Right. Thank you.